You could be a base or even a back spot. Yeah, how's your flexibility? I don't know. What are you doing tonight? Nothing, yeah. Why don't you come over for a sleepover?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for helping me out earlier at practice today. What exactly is going to happen during the sleepover?
I was really hoping to hook up with Ava at the sleepover tonight.
Where are the other girls? And the other girls can't make it.
Harlow, if you want to hook up with Ava, you know you've got to move fast, right? Like, she's already talking to Liana.
So, why don't you come cuddle with me? You look cold. Yeah. Where should I sleep tonight?
Right here, silly.
In our same beds?
Oh, yeah.
So, make it on purpose?
Well, of course. Would you care if maybe we just, like, stayed the night here?
I mean, if we can't go to the sleepover, you might as well.
All the girls on the squad are lesbians. That's why we all have sleepovers. It's secret code.
Look at yourself. You're beautiful. You just have to have a little more confidence in building experiences. Like, I just feel like it'd be so hot to have you, like, boss me around. Sure, let's do it. Do you want to try? Everyone's gonna love you because you're freaking amazing, dude. And you're, like, so hot. So, once you get her alone, I don't like her, really.
We're here together, so we don't have anything to worry about. I guess you're right.
Scene 4 operates as a deliberately uncomfortable yet revealing capstone to the anthology, not because it seeks provocation for its own sake, but because it confronts one of the most fraught tensions in lesbian and queer women's storytelling: the collision between desire, power, secrecy, and the deep cultural training women receive to blur emotional boundaries in the name of connection, approval, or belonging. And from the opening exchange between Jasmine and Aubrey, the scene establishes a dynamic shaped by affirmation and insecurity, where compliments about appearance and fitting into the cheer squad function less as flirtation than as reassurance, signaling how acceptance within a group often becomes the first gateway to intimacy for queer women who have learned that belonging must be earned rather than assumed. And this framing immediately situates the relationship within structures of social hierarchy, where desirability, status, and access are subtly negotiated through praise and validation. And the casual setting of a comfortable bed in a wealthy friend's home underscores how intimacy here unfolds in borrowed spaces, not ones the characters fully control, a choice that reflects how queer women often find themselves forming connections in environments that are provisional, surveilled, or contingent on someone else's permission. And the conversation about wealth, comfort, and other people's privilege further highlights this lack of ownership, reminding the viewer that safety and privacy are not evenly distributed, especially for young women navigating identity within social systems that reward conformity. And when the discussion turns to secrecy and the need to ensure that Harlow never finds out about what might occur, the film sharpens its critique, illustrating how secrecy is not inherently erotic but structurally imposed, emerging from overlapping loyalties, unspoken expectations, and the fear of social fallout. And this resonates strongly within queer communities, where overlapping friendships and romantic histories often coexist within tight-knit circles, creating ethical complexity rather than simple transgression. And Aubrey's admission of a prior connection with Harlow introduces emotional asymmetry, positioning her as someone with more experience and narrative authority, while Jasmine's curiosity and questioning signal both desire and uncertainty, a combination familiar to many queer women who find themselves drawn to someone who appears more assured or socially embedded. And the ensuing conversation about experience, variety, and commitment becomes less about physical preference and more about differing emotional philosophies, with Jasmine articulating a desire for singular focus and reduced anxiety, while Aubrey frames exploration as freedom. And this contrast reflects broader debates within queer spaces about safety versus experimentation, stability versus discovery, and the emotional labor required to manage multiple connections and communities, where boundaries are often porous. And importantly, the scene does not vilify either perspective, instead allowing the tension to exist unresolved, honoring the reality that queer women often arrive at intimacy carrying different survival strategies shaped by their histories. And when the conversation shifts towards stories of authority and mentorship, the film enters particularly sensitive terrain, but again chooses an emotionally grounded approach, focusing on why certain dynamics appeal rather than on the dynamics themselves, with Jasmine expressing attraction not to transgression but to clarity, confidence, and decisiveness, qualities often associated with authority figures in a culture that discourages women from occupying such roles openly. And this admission opens a broader commentary on how lesbian desire is frequently routed through admiration, mentorship, or fascination with competence, because these forms of attachment are more socially legible than overt romantic longing, especially for younger women still learning how to name their desires without shame. And Aubrey's responses, while playful, carry an undercurrent of caution, acknowledging difference in experience while resisting full ownership of power, which reflects the careful negotiation many queer women perform to avoid replicating hierarchies that have harmed them. And the scene's extended emphasis on asking, checking, and negotiating comfort is crucial, as it reframes consent not as a single moment, but as an ongoing dialogue shaped by trust, fear, and responsibility. And this aligns with the film's broader insistence that lesbian intimacy must be portrayed with ethical seriousness rather than fantasy, particularly in a cultural context that either erases such relationships or sensationalizes them without regard for emotional consequence. And the repeated concern about being discovered reinforces how external surveillance shapes internal decision-making, reminding viewers that even private moments between women are often filtered through imagined judgment, whether from peers, authority figures, or internalized norms, and the mention of cameras, house-sitting, and borrowed privacy all function symbolically to show how queer women learn to assess risk constantly, even in moments of closeness. And from a critical standpoint, Scene 4 is not asking the audience to endorse every choice made by the characters, but to understand the conditions under which those choices feel possible or inevitable, emphasizing structural pressures over individual morality. And this is where the scene's value as a cultural text becomes most apparent, as it exposes how desire can become entangled with validation, power, and secrecy when women are taught that their feelings must be managed carefully to remain acceptable. And Jasmine's hesitation, expressed through repeated questioning and nervous humor, mirrors the experience of many queer women who feel both drawn toward and wary of intimacy that carries emotional or social risk, while Aubrey's confidence is tempered by her awareness of consequence, creating a dynamic that is neither purely empowering nor exploitative, but unresolved and human. And the film's refusal to resolve this tension neatly is a strength, as it resists simplistic narratives of liberation that ignore the real emotional labor involved in navigating queer relationships within constrained environments. And for lesbian viewers in particular, the scene may evoke recognition rather than fantasy, recalling moments where desire surfaced through conversation rather than action, through speculation rather than certainty, and through the careful testing of boundaries rather than their dramatic crossing. And this emphasis on dialogue over spectacle aligns with the anthology's overarching commitment to women's interior lives, prioritizing thought, hesitation, and self-reflection as sites of meaning. And when viewed alongside the earlier scenes, Scene 4 broadens the anthology's emotional range by addressing not just tenderness and safety, but also confusion, ambition, and the desire to be chosen, highlighting that queer women's experiences are not monolithic and cannot be reduced to a single ethical posture. And beyond LGBTQ+ audiences, the scene speaks to women more generally, who have navigated relationships shaped by unequal power, unclear expectations, and the pressure to accommodate others' desires while suppressing their own doubts, illustrating how emotional burnout and anxiety often arise not from desire itself, but from the labor of managing it within restrictive frameworks. And the film's critique of societal discomfort with women's intimacy is particularly sharp here, as it exposes how that discomfort forces women to translate their feelings into acceptable scripts, whether through humor, roleplay, or secrecy, rather than allowing straightforward expressions of care and interest. And by presenting this process without judgment, the film invites viewers to reflect on how cultural narratives have shaped their own approaches to connection, and why honesty can feel more dangerous than concealment. And ultimately, Scene 4 underscores the anthology's central thesis that women's love for women exists within a web of social forces that complicate even the most private moments, and that becoming visible to oneself often involves confronting uncomfortable truths about desire, power, and responsibility. And in doing so, the scene insists that lesbian stories deserve the same complexity, seriousness, and moral nuance afforded to heterosexual narratives, rejecting both erasure and fetishization in favor of a portrayal rooted in empathy, reflection, and respect. And while the scene may challenge viewers, it does so in service of authenticity rather than shock, reinforcing the idea that queer women's relationships are not about taboo, but about navigating real emotional landscapes shaped by longing, care, fear, and the ongoing effort to live truthfully in a world that still struggles to fully acknowledge and honor women's love for one another.